Hi, my name is Jason Morgan, and I'm a member here at Kismet, and I thought I'd take this opportunity to sit down with the founder of Kismet, Mr. Christopher Plant, and for our inaugural episode of A Fern in Between Us. So, Chris, I wanted to, I've been a fan of Kismet in general, one of the founding members here at the Chestnut Hill space, and wanted to just kind of pick your brain a little bit in regards to why you started Kismet, why you started a co-working space out here in Chestnut Hill.
Yeah, well, I thought a lot about it, and I had been very familiar with co-working from my experience with CultureWorks of Greater Philadelphia and working with Thaddeus Squire, and kind of learned a lot about co-working 5-6 years ago, and it was always something that stuck in my head. And the idea of collaborative workspace was something that not only did it intrigue me, but I felt like it was something that I was innately drawn to, and that it would be something that, given the opportunity, would be something that I would pursue. Here in Chestnut Hill, it was a little odd that my real estate office is right down the street, and people would come into my space and they would essentially be asking for co-working without really knowing what they were talking about. I'd like a small office. I'd like a short-term lease.
Sure.
I can share a conference room. I don't even need my own bathroom. And really what it sounded like, it was small businesses that I have always had an affinity for working with, that wanted kind of like a newly defined space. And out here, they didn't even really know what that was.
Right. And so, like, for myself, working from home, working from a laptop, or coffee shops more often than that, I would find like my inefficiencies within my day of like the time that I had to go to the coffee shop, and then like was I switching to another one, and things like that. And when I knew of the concept of co-working, but I thought that it was just something that was like I'd have to hop on the train, hop on SEPTA to go into Center City, which was just going to be this larger time inefficiency with it.
Right.
So the fact that you first started off with all the way out here, the way out here in Chestnut Hill was great. What was the besides obviously the proximity to where your real estate office was and that background, what was your reasoning for looking at a tertiary market or looking at something that's outside of Center City?
So my commercial work has always been geared towards something that was kind of outside of the norm, and I've never really pursued like the standard commercial real estate deal. I didn't want to rent whole floors and skyscrapers. It was mostly about working with small businesses and finding things and little pockets of unconventional commercial real estate that kind of fit who I was and really tied in with my background and the kind of things that I enjoyed. And this building here was a very unique building, and I brought a couple tenants to it. I had brought a supermarket that hadn't worked out, and we'd replaced it with a gym. There was an adult daycare downstairs that left, and we replaced it with a giant art supply store.
Right.
And it was, in that process that I really became fixated on what was here in this space, and just loved the architecture, felt like it was grossly underused, and that we could do something more with it. And so in that, mixing that with the experiences I had with other people kind of asking for a new kind of space, it really made me believe that it was something that I could do here, and it was something that I could bring my building experience to, I could bring my networking experience to, and I could bring my real estate experience to. So, well,
I think even beyond that, knowing you personally, like you have this affinity for and even a background within art and design, and as a creative myself, like coming into a space like this, it's gorgeous, right? Like you mentioned, you started with this rough shell, but in Philadelphia we have these great rough shells that are just even more beautiful than just some vanilla box that would be put up in some generic IKEA desks that are put in there. And the thing that drew me in, and I hear it from people all the time, is they come in and they just want to show off the space. If they're a member here, they just want to show it off. Like we want to hang out on these couches. We want to use the event space.
And the light and
the light's great.
The volume of the spaces. And so when I decided that I was going to try and go for this co-working thing, and I was looking around at how I was going to raise money and what was going to make it distinctive for me, I went to Chicago, I was in Denver, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, New York, Detroit. And when I would go into spaces, I was really drawn to how people chose to build the space. And I would go into spaces that were very successful, that I felt had off-the-shelf furniture that was wildly, sort of uninteresting and really felt in many ways like a recreation of traditional corporate space that I had seen elsewhere that wasn't going to be what would drive me to be involved in this type of business. And so, I went to art school. The friends that I have, when they want something, they generally make it as opposed to buy it, and that was one of the things that I wanted to bring to what we're doing here was, let's look at what we're trying to do. If we're trying to make a desk, if we're trying to make, a public space, if we're trying to make a kitchen, and how can we do that in a way that is distinctive and unique and functional and beautiful. And so design was one of the things that we sort of baked into the DNA of Kismet.
Yeah, it's one of your core values within, and it totally shows true with it. I was just speaking to someone the other day, and they said, I actually have a membership. We were at the Spring Arts location, and they have a membership at another co-working space in the city for other purposes. And they said, but you know what? When I come here to Kismet, I feel like I'm home. They feel like this sense of relax that. Which sometimes I think is the opposite perception of what most people think. Like, I am
or
trying to get that.
Or what they think that they want.
Right, what they think that they want. But like you're thinking this is this work mentality, this workspace. I would almost question someone saying like, well, you said that you feel like you're home, but you are relaxed in that to be able to be creative within this aesthetically designed space, that you're not feeling like you're in this corporate box, over here. The other point to that is also you have selected within the spaces art to be a constant part of that. Can you speak about how you've selected the art and how you've teamed up with people?
Okay, well, I'll get to the art piece, but I do want to touch back on something that you talked about. And I've heard co-working operators and workplace operators talk about, the quality of the space versus the community that you built. And that the space was always secondary to the community, and that the space was, in some cases, unimportant, that it was all about the community. And one of the things that I've always felt, going back to my art school days when I lived in a big giant loft, and what I pursued for my housing all throughout, was that the types of spaces that I'm in have a dramatic effect on how I think, what I'm thinking about, on my moods, whether there's going to be natural light, and so that was a gigantic part of making sure that I had people immediately offer me opportunities that were very attractive in spaces that I couldn't handle. I would just never do it. Just whether it was the parking in front of it or the entrance to the space or the space itself, if it didn't fit kind of like the overall vibe of being like a really dramatic space, or there's being something incredibly unique about it, it wasn't even something that I would consider. So it's less about the opportunity and more about what the space can bring and what I can bring to the space.
Sure, people want to be in beautiful spaces. They want to have the aesthetic to it, and that bespoke approach that you're bringing to it, that artistic eye that you're bringing to it, as well as even just the upcycle or the reuse of materials that you're finding there in the space or other
and even that's like a
materials
fine balance now. Like, we don't want to do too much reclaimed lumber. There's a lot of sort of tropes out there architecturally and design-wise that are potentially being overused, and we want to make sure that we make spaces that are universal and that can stand the test of time. But to touch back on what you said about art, art has been a gigantic part of my life for a long time. I graduated from art school in Boston, and it's been something I've sought to involve in my life, since that time. And with this, I reached out to a couple different people, and Tom Judd was the first person that really responded in the way that I wanted him to, and he really thought that this was a great opportunity to curate some work into workspaces, and he's sold a lot of paintings in that sphere as well. But it's been really nice, especially with the Spring Art space, branching out and really seeing how people react to it. And I've had some experience with a group called SEI with the West Collection, where they brought in very contemporary art that is sometimes in conflict with the people in the spaces and draws reactions out of people. And art has always been so kind of one of these things that can potentially take you to a different place. And so that is something that I'm really happy to do, and to make these spaces visually alive and feel like something that it's not a static approach. We didn't just buy a work of art and put it there. We didn't get it from a store and just put it up. We're going to constantly change it, and we're going to make sure that we allow our spaces to kind of breathe and evolve and to consistently be alive.
And I think that's apparent with it, and that, you know, as a member going through the space and seeing it, like the pieces are changing all of the time. Obviously, there's different openings that happen, and we're featuring the different artists. But it just, you know, I could be behind my computer, you know, for 2 hours. I'm sitting there crushing through emails, crushing through projects, and I just need that brain space to, like, I get up and just, you know, get lost within a painting for a few minutes to help, you know, work through that next piece. And I may even be staring at it and like wireframing a website or a ClickFunnels, but I'm, you know, looking through that and drawing out inspiration from those different pieces as well. So I think it's really important.
Exactly as intended.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's fun, and it's cool to see how these things that you put out as intentions are being, you know, absorbed and being accepted by the community, and also that you're taking the feedback from the community and then putting it forth within the future spaces as well.
You know, to that end, you know, when you talk about the community, you know, that was something that, you know, you came in the door very early with a list of people who you thought would be interested in co-working, and that was a really unbelievable scenario to help us kind of springboard forward very quickly. But you know, it became evident to me that what I was doing here in Chestnut Hill was something that was you know, sort of replicable in other communities, whether they're tertiary markets like a standard suburban market outside of a Chestnut Hill, but even in different areas in downtown. You know, and that's when, you know, we decided to open the location in Spring Arts. You know, it was because it wasn't a strictly downtown market. It wasn't right in the blue chip commercial district, and it was something that was outside of that and kind of fit like a more realistic traffic pattern. It was going to be a little more affordable. It was we were able to get better space. We were able to make kind of like the handmade spaces that we enjoy and get incredible views. And so you know, it has been my mission to kind of find areas where I think that I can replicate the community that we've developed here and that we're already working on in Spring Arts and that we're hoping to do in our new location in Manayunk. And I think that you know, there are the types of people that are reading the Wired magazine and the Fast Company, and that are into the possibility of being part of innovative spaces that don't have to be downtown. And I think that you know, when I think of innovation or progress, or, you know, the hustle, the idea that you have to be at 18th and Walnut in a 40-story building on the 22nd floor, that's not what I think about. So.
Yeah, and it's just even the time, you know, and the energy is different within that. Let's talk about Spring Arts for a moment. The Spring Arts is the, you know, off of Spring Garden for, you know, for those people that are new to that area of Philadelphia by Union Transfer, and the space in the building is amazing. We're on the 6th floor. You've got windows all the way around.
39 windows.
The 39 windows. The light in there, you know, goes back to what you're saying of like creating that space. You chose it very specifically for it. You've got the rail park that just opened up recently. That's, you know, going to be huge for you know, people that are working and having spaces that are out there. Other local businesses that are coming in there. I know you were, you know, had a hand in getting Love City Brewing that just opened up there as well. And just this really, you know, vibrant community that's also focusing on, you know, revitalizing this area, and then just new different opportunities for local businesses as well. Yeah,
so I mean, in that, you know, I lived in Williamsburg, Brooklyn in the late 90s, and that was sort of like the hipster revolution of the late 90s, when Brooklyn, that we know it now as this overblown, muscular, sort of artsy-fartsy place, was just brand new. And I feel a lot of the same kind of vibes in that arts and crafts neighborhood in Kensington, in South Philly, and in that are coming to Philadelphia, that remind me a lot about what I experienced there. And so that Spring Arts neighborhood was something that, you know, having worked with Craig Grossen, my landlord, on some other deals farther downtown in his previous life, with Tony Goldman, you know, I knew what he was doing, and I really went to him and sort of asked him about his vision, and asked him what his, you know, his bigger plan was in terms of what he wanted to do with the neighborhood, and I got it, and it was like perfectly aligned with the kinds of things that I think about. And, you know, I love this idea of going into a neighborhood and thinking not so much about what's there, but what could be there, and what opportunities might exist for the people that I know that want to own businesses and create equity for themselves, and be a part of helping design and develop a city that is reflective of who they are and the time that we live in. And that area was a bit of a blank slate, and he was able to get enough real estate that that I knew that he could probably do it. And so I looked into, you know, sort of my little grab bag of people that I knew that were looking for opportunities, and, you know, was able to bring Love City to the table. And they're a phenomenal example of somebody that came in and invested a bunch of their own money, got investors to come in, got some money from the landlord, and made something that is absolutely gigantic. And the success that they're having so far is a great example of that. And then knowing that the rail park was going to come, and knowing that there was this really this force that was developing to kind of make that a thing. And then tying back to my involvement in the skate park over by the art museum, you know, I knew what could happen when communities come together to do something that's bigger than themselves, that feels generational, that feels like something that could change the way that people think about a particular neighborhood or even about a city.
Sure.
And so having the opportunity to be in that building came out, and, you know, I was going to be on the second floor because I had very high ceilings. I wanted to do something that was similar to Kismet 1, where I could have multiple levels, but you know, being on that second floor, there were no views, there was not great light, there were not great windows.
It would have been a completely different space.
Been,
like and you wouldn't have what you have there now, which is great.
You know, I remember like being very close to executing a lease for the second floor and being like, I need to go back upstairs again. I need to go, and then walking up, and that sort of take your breath away moment. And you know, and I've now been in situations where I've sat down to work at 10 o'clock down at Spring Arts, and like, poof, it's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and the whole day has gone by, and I haven't really thought, you know, like, oh my God, I'm working. And, you know, the space is really incredible it's got a great vibe. And I'm really excited to see how people get in there and kind of make it their own and do something
plus the
special.
events there, like the events that have been hosted there already, quite a different type, you know, many different types of events from you know, businesses or even the Impact 100 group that's been in there. You've got some tech events that have been happening. We've had some political events that have happened there as well.
And the arts.
The Aaron Ricketts show was amazing, and so all of these different pieces like all really come together, and I think it's reflective within, you know, your background within all of these different sectors, as well as, you know, the members that are helping to bring that, you know, those events to the table with it as well. It's just reflective of all the different unique backgrounds. And with that, with Kismet in general, it's not like it's just for tech. It's not like it's just for startup. You know, here we're pleasantly surprised of, like, we have quite a few writers that are here, and we have people that are in tech and that are in design, and it's a unique mix within that community.
I've always wanted to be sort of very agnostic about like who we were trying to open up to. I mean, a lot of times if people force me to define it, I would say that we're gearing our space mostly towards the creative class, but we do like tech, and we do like entrepreneurs, and we do like writers, and we do like you know, the broad mix of people that we have that creates the diversity in the space that we had always wanted to provide. And I think that you know, when it's all tech, like when all those conversations are all about like, how do we grow this business and how we scale this thing, you know, that's perfectly appropriate for some people, some environments, and some businesses, but not all. And that can be a very insular world that doesn't necessarily put you in a position where you're going to meet people from different walks of life or, you know, different fields. And
everyone's vying for that same spot. Everyone's vying for that same type of thing.
You know, when I thought about you know, what I was doing here, you know, and I didn't have a name. You know, I was thinking about like what did I want from it? What did I want to build from it? And what kind of situations did I want to put into play that would potentially make this what I wanted it to be? And it was and that was how I came to this word Kismet, which is a word I've been attached to since I was a young kid, and that's just rattled around my brain and been kind of a part of my overall approach to life, and always trying to figure out, you know, what nugget of optimism or what positive thing can you extract from just about anything that happens in your life, whether it is something that is as commonplace as missing a train, and then you have to walk to work and you meet somebody that you haven't seen in years, or even, you know, some of the lesser you know, experiences that you have. Like, how do you learn from them, and like, why did they happen, and really trying to kind of create certain sort of philosophies about how you live. And so the idea that a bunch of people from different walks of life would come together and maybe make something really special is how I came to the word Kismet. And it was right in this space. I was in this space and I was like, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to call it? And, we had some really conventional names that we were batting around. And I was really happy to come to something that felt universal, felt epic, but also felt, comfortable and intimate.
That's great. I mean, the philosophy, like when you bring something to it that has a deeper meaning, and you said, went all the way back to you being.
Yeah, I've had that word
you've
for
been
a long time.
Holding on to it for what you're going to use it for, and it makes sense. It makes sense within that. So to wrap up, let's talk about, we've gone from Spring Arts. You're looking, that space is amazing. What's next beyond Spring Arts?
So, we're already well under construction on Kismet 3, which will be over on Manayunk on Main Street. And that is an opportunity that would not have been the obvious place that I would go next. But the minute I saw it, it was one of those things where I knew it was right. Somebody had come.
Space drew you in.
Well, somebody had come to Kismet 1 here in Chestnut Hill and seen the space and immediately understood what I was trying to do and dragged me over there and I knew that it was right away. And it's a big epic space. It's an old retail location that we're able to repurpose in a really wonderful way. Beautiful stairs, skylights, and the environment is as special as anything we've done yet. And Manayunk is a great crossroads, and there's a lot of people that want to come together there that don't have a place to work there, and so I'm really looking forward to that environment. Another thing that we're working on is we're going to be putting together a radio station, and that's Radio Kismet, and that's going to be, you can think of it less as a spot on your FM dial and more as a repository of information, content, and programming possibilities that would live on the internet. But it's something that we're going to use to increase our capacity for building community and create a lot more opportunities to amplify the voices, not just of our members, but of members of communities, advocates for certain ideas, and really create a gateway for people who might be looking for different ways to get their message out or to be heard, that they can come to us and try and figure that out. And
utilize the space to create the content.
I mean, the world of podcasts and sort of online content has been blowing up. Teaching, MOOCs, like all kinds of stuff that's out there, and I want to make something that is as much a potential library for content and programming, but also a gateway for people to kind of like figure stuff out and communicate to people and build ideas.
That's excellent. I mean, the like you said, content is king, right?
Yeah.
And being able to, provide that within the community of, okay, now looking at 1, 2, 3 different spaces, and just the mass amount of people that are connected through that community, and giving them a platform and giving them just another opportunity, not just with the world, but focusing it back within Philadelphia. And I think that's a really strong point that, is important to many people here, is that you are a local, everyone that you work with in here are locals. You're not just coming in and seeing this opportunity of co-working and going, oh, we're going to drop this into Philadelphia. You are looking at it from the inside and going, okay, what can we provide for, the community of Philadelphia just in general?
You guys can come through. Go ahead. I think that, that's a good observation. And I think that what, it always wants to be is it always wants to be organic, and it always wants to be intimate. And there's this principle that I learned about from my buddy Thaddeus, which is called the Dunbar principle, which is about the 150 people that you can have in your life. And what I'd really like to do is make sure. And this is where another point of differentiation with some of the larger institutionally financed co-working spaces is that, that this is a place where people can go and just get stuff done. I always want to make sure that's the part of it. But I do also want to make sure that we create legitimate communities. And as I look to grow, I want to pursue communities where I think that's there. And there are places that I think about all the time that are like Doylestown, Conshohocken, Princeton, media, areas where I know there's cool people, where I know there's lots of really fun stuff going on. And there may be places where those people can get together now, but maybe I can make something that would be additive. And you know, we have always, even with other co-working operators, tried to create you know, expanded bandwidth for them, for us, and for ways that we can work together and to create non-competitive situations, you know, that we feel are, you know, it's a better way to grow. A lot of people I know, when they're looking to grow something, they can be incredibly protective of it and build a wall around it.
Don't tell anybody about it.
And I have been, you know, trying to get my message out and let people know what I want to do, and make it, you know, something that people are happy to get into. And I've always sought to create opportunity within whatever I was doing. You know, that's where I think, like, kind of the networking aspect of co-working, like, is just like, it's part of my DNA. It's something that I've been.
It totally is. I mean, it's not, and you know, I always get into this, people say, oh, you're always really good at co-work, you're always really good at networking, and it's not like this networking event that you show up to in the old school, like hand a business card and you're trying to get something out of it. It's like, you see something and you want to propel this person's idea, and I think that you have this platform.
It's just like something that you do innately.
You connect
it's like
people
a part
together
of your life, and you know, you meet somebody and you're like, how can I make this person's life better? Like, how can I do something that would you know, just improve what they're doing, or make it easier to be successful.
And sometimes it's as, you know, I won't say as easy, but it's providing the space for it. And sometimes,
and a lot of times it just gives you more ammunition to get through your own day.
Right.
You know, if you feel like at the end of the day you helped a couple people do some things better than they would do it normally, you're going to feel better.
Absolutely.
And you know, it's like, you know, carpenters get to like put stuff together really well and feel good about that. And you know, sometimes in this in the worlds that we live in, it's hard to measure and judge, you know, what is success. And you know, building community is a huge part of that for me. And you know, they say you're the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and so I'm always trying to make you know, an environment where I can spend some good time with 5 super fun people, and make it even bigger. You know, and so.
Excellent. Well, this has been really, you know, informative. It's been great to, you know, hear a little bit more about, you know, what went into not only the word Kismet, but then the movement of it, the creating of the community. And I'm looking forward to you sharing these new spaces with everyone else as well.
Yeah,
so
well, thanks very much.
Thanks so much, man.
All right.
Catch you on the next one, the next episode of A Fern in Between Us.
Us.
Awesome.